3 pieces of data. 3 pieces of data is nothing. I mean, have a look at this graph. This is produced by the physicist Cesar Hidalgo. He's at MIT. And you won't be able to understand a word of it. You know, this is what it looks like. Cesar has trawled a database of over 5,000 different products. And he's used techniques of network analysis to interrogate this database and to graph relationships between the different products. And it's wonderful, wonderful work. You show all these interconnections, all these interrelations. And I think it'll be profoundly useful in understanding how it is that economies grow. Brilliant work. Cesar and I tried to write a piece for the New York Times magazine explaining how this worked. And what we learned was Cesar's work is far too good to explain in the New York Times magazine. But 5,000 products, that's still nothing. And 5,000 products. Imagine counting every product category in Cesar Hidalgo's data. Imagine you had 1 second per product category. In about the length of this session, you would have counted all 5,000. Now imagine doing the same thing for every different type of product on sale in Walmart. There are 100,000 there. It would take you all day. Now imagine trying to count every different specific product and service on sale in a major economy such as Tokyo, London, or New York. It's even more difficult in Edinburgh because you have to count all the whiskey and the tartan. Okay? If you wanted to count every product and service on offer in New York, there are 10 billion of them. It would take you 317 years. This is how complex the economy we've created is. And I'm just counting toasters here. I'm not trying to solve the Middle East problem. I mean, this is, the complexity here is unbelievable. On just a piece of context, the societies in which our brains evolved had about 300 products and services. You can count them in 5 minutes. So this is the complexity of the world that surrounds us. This perhaps is why we find the God complex so tempting. We tend to sort of retreat and say, oh, we can draw a picture, we can show some graphs, and we get it. We understand how this works. And we don't. We never do. Now, I'm not trying to deliver a nihilistic message here. I'm not trying to say we can't solve complicated problems in a complicated world. We clearly can, but the way we solve them is with humility, to abandon the God complex and to actually use a problem-solving technique that works. And we have a problem-solving technique that works. Now, you show me a successful complex system, and I will show you a system that has evolved through trial and error. Here's an example. This baby was produced through trial and error. I realize that's an ambiguous statement. Maybe I should clarify it. This baby, it's a human body. It evolved. What is evolution? Over millions of years, variation and selection. Variation and selection. Trial and error. Trial and error. And it's not just biological systems that produce miracles through trial and error. And you could use it in an industrial context. So let's say you wanted to make detergent. Let's say you're Unilever and you want to make detergent in a factory near Liverpool. How do you do it? Well, you have this great big tank full of liquid detergent. You pump it at high pressure through a nozzle. You create a spray of detergent. Then the spray dries, it turns into powder, it falls to the floor, you scoop it up, you put it in cardboard boxes, you sell it at a supermarket, you make lots of money. How do you design that nozzle? Turns out to be very important. Now, if you ascribe to the God complex, what you do is you find yourself a little god. You find yourself a mathematician, you find yourself a physicist, somebody who understands the dynamics of this fluid, and he will or she will calculate the optimal design of the nozzle. Now, Unilever did this, and it didn't work. Too complicated. Even this problem, too complicated. But the geneticist, Professor Steve Jones, describes how Unilever actually did solve this problem. Trial and error. Variation and selection. You take a nozzle, and you create 10 random variations on the nozzle. You try out all 10. You keep the one that works best. You create 10 variations on that one. You try out all 10. You keep the one that works best. You try out 10 variations on that one. You see how this works, right? And after 45 generations, you have this incredible nozzle, looks a bit like a chess piece, functions absolutely brilliantly. We have no idea why it works. No idea at all. But the moment you step back from the God complex and you say, let's just try a bunch of stuff, let's have a systematic way of determining what's working and what's not, you can solve your problem. Now, this process of trial and error is actually far more common in successful institutions than we care to recognize. And we've heard a lot about how economies function. The US economy is still the world's greatest economy. How did it become the world's greatest economy? I mean, I could give you all kinds of facts and figures about the US economy, but I think the most salient one is this. 10% of American businesses disappear every year. That is a huge failure rate. It's far higher than the failure rate for, say, Americans. 10% of Americans don't disappear every year, which leads us to conclude, American businesses fail faster than Americans, and therefore American businesses are evolving faster than Americans, and eventually they'll have evolved to such a high peak of perfection that they will make us all their pets. If, of course, they haven't already done so. I sometimes wonder. But it's this process of trial and error that explains this great divergence, this incredible performance of Western economies. It didn't come because you put some incredibly smart person in charge. It's come through trial and error. Now, I've been sort of banging on about this for the last couple of months, and people sometimes say to me, hey, well, Tim, it's kind of obvious. Obviously, trial and error is very important. Obviously, experimentation is very important. Why are you just sort of wandering around saying this obvious thing? And I say, okay, fine. You think it's obvious. I will admit it's obvious when schools start teaching children that there are some problems that don't have a correct answer. Stop giving them lists of questions, every single one of which has an answer, and there's an authority figure in the corner behind the teacher's desk who knows all the answers, and if you can't find the answers, you must be lazy or stupid. When schools stop doing that all the time, I will admit that, yes, it's obvious that trial and error is a good thing. When a politician stands up, campaigning for elected office, and says, I want to fix our health system, I want to fix our education system, I have no idea how to do it. I've got a half a dozen ideas. We're going to test them out. They'll probably all fail. Then we'll test some other ideas out. We'll find some that work. We'll build on those. We'll get rid of the ones that don't. When a politician campaigns on that platform, and more importantly, when voters like you and me are willing to vote for that kind of politician, then I will admit that it is obvious that trial and error works, and that, thank you. Until then, I'm going to keep banging on about trial and error and why we should abandon the God complex. Because it's so hard to admit our own infallibility. It's so uncomfortable. And